Hi, my name is Matt Hendricks. I'm the project founder for dSIPRouter. So today I'm going to talk about a new feature that we have that allows dSIPRouter to be paired with Microsoft Teams. This is through a functionality that Microsoft Teams has called direct routing. So my use case for the day will be to connect dSIPRouter to my FusionPBX system. The flow is going to be, and we're going to be focused on outbound calls from Teams. So what's going to happen is that for my Teams client, I'm going to hit the Teams cloud infrastructure, and then from there, we are going to focus on making sure that Teams can communicate with dSIPRouter, and we've made it pretty simple and pretty easy to do. And then we're going to configure dSIPRouter to route the call out to FusionPBX. So that's our goal for the day. So let's go ahead and get started. So first, a couple of housekeeping things that you need to know around Microsoft Teams. It is a little complicated to get the right licenses set up, and it's a little complicated in all the call flow and what Microsoft expects. The whole communication is via TLS, so it's a little difficult to troubleshoot and figure out what's going on. But once again, we've tried to make that a little bit easier for you. So the first thing is, I'm going to assume that you already have your Microsoft 365 account configured. You have a domain that you can use to be able to configure your dSIPRouter instance. These domains have to be managed by the Microsoft domain, so you actually have to buy a domain from Microsoft in order for you to use this. So I bought a domain, dSIPRouter.net, and I actually have my dSIPRouter instance, and it's actually SBC3 that is registered here, or not necessarily registered, but assigned a DNS name. What we also have here is the Microsoft Teams Admin Center, and if we click on Voice and go to Direct Routing, you will see here, this is where you'll get statistics of your paired device, in our case dSIPRouter. So it takes a little bit for it to load, but I unpaired it, so it has an issue right now, but I unpaired it, but this is a way for you can figure out, how's the communication of the actual dSIPRouters, or whatever SBC you're using. In our case, we're leveraging dSIPRouter as an SBC. You can kind of see how well is it performing from a Microsoft side. I'll point out one quick thing. This actually changed a little bit. Before, you weren't able to add your SBC to here directly. You had to go through the command line to actually add it. They actually added a nice little feature here, so you can go ahead and add your SBC right from this GUI. Before, you had to go in and make that change from a PowerShell script. So this is a quick note that they are improving this and making it easier for you to use. So all right, so let's go ahead and now that we kind of have that kind of underneath our belt, and we kind of understand at a high level the lay of the land from a Microsoft side, let's go over to dSIPRouter. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. dSIPRouter has a few different use cases that we focus on. In this case, the use case obviously is Microsoft Teams. Microsoft Teams is very domain centric. You're basically setting up a domain inside Microsoft Teams to route calls outside of Microsoft Teams. So I think it fit best inside the domains feature of dSIPRouter, and that's where we placed it. So you can add multiple domains that you want to be able to proxy traffic from Teams. So in this case, this one is SBC3dSIPRouter.net, and I'm going to select the domain type. In this case, is Microsoft Teams Direct Routing, and that's all I need to do. We'll add the rest in for you automatically. So it lays out the endpoints for the Microsoft Teams infrastructure. The next thing we need to do is just validate that things are working the way it needs to work. So this connectivity tester here is going through the validate the DNS name, the TLS certificates, and the option messages, which is what is used to send to Microsoft Teams, so they know that for us to validate that they're still alive, and for them obviously to validate that we're still alive as well. So so if you did have a problem with this, these will actually be read, and for the TLS certificates, it'll give you a little explanation of what potentially may be going on. The big thing here is to understand a couple of things. Is that when I installed dSIPRouter, I set the host name before doing the install. When I set the host name before doing the install, dSIPRouter will actually, well, let me back up. I set the host name, and I went into that Microsoft 365 admin to the DNS settings, and I actually specified the SBC3 is equated to an IP address. So I actually put a DNS record in for that IP address before I started the install. And the reason why I'm telling you this is that if you do that, dSIPRouter will automatically generate a certificate for you. And that certificate will be generated by Let's Encrypt. Let's Encrypt certificates is a valid certificate authority that Microsoft Teams accepts. Because if you look at how the communication happens between Microsoft Teams and dSIPRouter, or any SBC in that case, it expects mutual TLS. So that means that it's going to ask for a certificate, and then it's also going to ask for client certificates as well, what we support. So we've took care of all of those complexities around certificate management. So you don't have to worry about that. So all right, so now we've set up. It looks like we're able to communicate between Teams and dSIPRouter. We need to go into carrier groups and define our FusionPBX. So our FusionPBX is going to be acting as our carrier in this case. We use the word carrier in this context because this is basically dSIPRouter focuses on endpoint groups, so things that it needs to connect to, and then dSIPRouter will route that traffic to carriers, to other endpoints. Basically, we just consider it as a carrier. So in this case, we're routing from Microsoft Teams to Fusion, and so Fusion will be our carrier. So let's set the endpoint up. This is going to be PBX1. The IP address here, I believe, is this. We were going to notice we were going to be routing to the external interface of FusionPBX. And I've already configured FusionPBX to accept traffic from our IP address, by the way. All right, so now that's added. We'll go ahead and do a reload. All right, so we should now, one other thing we have to do is go to global outbound routes. And now that we define that carrier, we need to specify, I have to grab the carrier ID, which is 66. We need to specify that whenever a call comes in, the default rule here, we'll send it out of that carrier. And you can get more fancier with that, those rules as you need to, but that's okay. For this is a good example, good demo. Okay, so now I'm going to flip over here, use SNgrep, which is my tool of choice, and I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. All right, so we can see it, and then I'm going to bring up my Microsoft Teams. All right, and we're going to place a call. Okay.
The person at extension 1000
There's
is
the
not
call.
available. Record your message at the tone. Press any key or stop talking to end the recording.
All right. And we'll just hang up here.
To listen listen to the recording, press 1 to say.
All right. So let's take a look at what this call looked like. So here's the invite. Actually, let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay. So here is the invite that came in. And by the way, we're not seeing the encrypted side that's going over TLS to Microsoft Teams. We're seeing all the traffic that's going between dSIPRouter and the FusionPBX system. Okay. So all right. So let's look at the invite. So this invite came from the Microsoft SIP proxy, right? And by I'll do a couple tidbits here, is that they change the SIP proxy all the time. So if you've seen different behavior, it's probably because they've updated the SIP proxy. If you can tell here, they keep the version number as pretty much the date that they released this particular instance of dSIPRouter, or not dSIPRouter, of their SIP proxy. So if you're starting to see any changes or issues, check the date. We kind of certified against this version of the proxy, so there may be additional changes. But that's why it was important for us to come up with a subscription plan for people who want to use Microsoft Teams, because there's a lot of changes that happen that we need to keep up on, a lot of testing that need to happen. So a little bit behind the scenes of why we have a subscription for the Microsoft Teams feature functionality. So let's look at this really quickly. So we have a request coming in Microsoft Teams. We do have the RTP engine running inside of dSIPRouter. In this case, we're just passing the traffic along. And so in this case, Microsoft Teams wants everything to be done with secure RTP. So you can tell that in this case with this statement here that secure RTP is being requested. Trying, and then a 200 OK. Since this is Fusion and Fusion supports secure RTP, so it's able to basically no transcoding or switching of from secure to non-secure is needed since Fusion supports it. So we're sending that back, and then normal ACK and abide. Okay, and that was really it. I want to do a quick quick demo of what does it take to set up Microsoft Teams to communicate with dSIPRouter, and how would you route traffic to some other SIP device or endpoint. All right, have a great day.